My name is Amelia, and I am 30 years old. As I sit alone in my small apartment in Chicago, Illinois, my crutches leaning against the wall and the faint ache in my right leg pulsing, a thought keeps echoing in my mind. How did I become the invisible daughter in my own family? Growing up, my life wasn't marked by the kind of neglect movies often dramatize. There was no screaming, no abandonment, no outright cruelty. Instead, mine was a quieter kind of invisibility, wrapped in politeness, hidden behind favoritism. I was the firstborn, but you'd never know it. That title, that attention, that sense of being special, all of it belonged to my younger sister, Sabrina. Sabrina was beautiful in the way fairy tales describe, sun-kissed blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a voice that flowed like music. From an early age, she was adored by everyone, our neighbors, our teachers, and most painfully, our parents, Jason and Vanessa. While I folded laundry, did dishes, and kept track of grocery lists, Sabrina twirled in the living room, painted abstract splashes that my parents hailed as genius, and basked in their endless admiration. Every August, when school began, Sabrina was showered with 3 new outfits, shiny shoes, and a custom backpack that reflected her creative spirit. Me? I got 1 new shirt. The rest were hand-me-downs from Sabrina, often too small or completely unlike my style. I still remember the day of the piano talk. Both of us wanted lessons. Both of us had saved our allowances. Both pretended to play on the table with our fingers. I thought the decision would be fair, maybe even a coin toss. But one evening, our father, Jason, smiled warmly at Sabrina and said, "Sweetheart, we hear music when you hum in the kitchen. You're the natural. Amelia is more practical." And that was that. Even as a child, I forced myself to smile through the disappointment. I told myself, be the bigger person. Someday they'll see how much I carry. But deep down, I knew what I carried never mattered to them. The day I turned 21, I packed my small suitcase and moved out. Not because I had to, but because I needed to. My tiny studio apartment on the east side of Chicago became my sanctuary. Barely 400 square feet, with a fold-down Murphy bed, mismatched thrift store furniture, and a kitchenette so small I could touch both walls at once. But it was mine. After graduating with a degree in marketing, I quickly secured a junior analyst position at a local firm. The pay wasn't great, but it was honest work and I poured myself into it. Long nights, skipped lunches, constant hustle. Meanwhile, Sabrina had returned home after completing her fine arts degree, an expensive $50,000 a year dream that my parents paid for without hesitation. Not only did they welcome her back with open arms, they redecorated her room and encouraged her to take her time, finding her creative direction. At our monthly family dinners, my updates about work were brushed aside with lukewarm nods. Marketing, huh? Well, at least it's steady, my father Jason would say. But when Sabrina brought over a painting of tangled wires and called it hope, my parents gushed as if she had just cured cancer. I didn't resent her, not yet. I told myself I had my independence, my own apartment, my own career. I didn't need recognition. But I couldn't ignore the truth. Every spotlight, every proud smile, every cheer, it always belonged to Sabrina. One evening, after a long workday, I overheard my father Jason on the phone with the electric company. His voice was low, strained, almost pleading for a payment extension. That was when it hit me. Things at home were worse than they let on. Jason's construction jobs were slowing down, his back pain growing worse, and my mother Vanessa's part-time teaching gig barely covered groceries. Sabrina, of course, wasn't paying rent. She was finding herself. That night, I did something no one knew about. I logged into my bank account and set up a recurring monthly transfer of $4,000 straight into my parents' account. I timed it to land mid-month, right when most of their bills were due. I didn't tell them it was me. I just did it. A few days later, I received a message from my mother. "We don't know who's helping us, but we're so grateful. Sabrina must have arranged something. We're so proud of her." I stood in my tiny kitchen, phone in hand, letting that sentence sink in. Sabrina must have arranged something. That became their story, Sabrina, their sweet, selfless daughter, the one sacrificing for her family. And me? I stayed quiet. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit. What mattered was that they were okay. But deep down, I wondered, how long could I keep being invisible? The months passed. I worked overtime, climbed the corporate ladder quietly, and kept sending the $4,000 each month. My company even celebrated me for landing a $300,000 client, but at the next family dinner, it was barely acknowledged. That's wonderful, Amelia. You've always been good with practical stuff, my mother Vanessa said. Then she immediately turned to Sabrina. Did you ever finish that piece you were painting with your emotions? I chewed my food in silence. But the breaking point didn't come because of money. It came through pain. One rainy Tuesday evening, about 2 weeks before Sabrina's birthday bash, I left the office late. The buses were delayed, so I walked the last few blocks home. Exhausted, soaked, and juggling a grocery bag in one hand and my phone in the other, I didn't look both ways while crossing. The car wasn't speeding. It wasn't reckless. It was just bad timing. The driver slammed the brakes, but not fast enough. The front bumper struck my right leg, and I collapsed onto the pavement with a cry I barely recognized as my own. The rest blurred into sirens, voices, and a paramedic asking me questions I couldn't answer. Hours later, I woke up in the hospital with my leg in a brace and heavy bandages. A doctor explained I had sustained a fractured femur. I'd need crutches for at least 2 months, maybe more. My ribs were badly bruised, and the swelling in my leg would take weeks to subside. I asked the nurse if anyone had come to see me. She shook her head. No one's listed as your emergency contact. Do you want us to call someone? Hesitating, I finally asked her to call my mother, Vanessa. She answered on the second ring. The nurse held the phone near my ear as I lay there in pain. Her voice came flat, almost impatient. Oh, Amelia, I see. That's unfortunate. Well, we're busy planning Sabrina's party, but let us know when you're out. That was it. No visit. No flowers. Not even a voicemail the next day. The nurse looked at me with soft eyes. Sweetheart, she whispered, you deserve better. Lying there alone in that stark hospital room, machines beeping around me, pain pulsing in my leg, I whispered to myself, they're never going to see me. Not even like this. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the mirror in my small apartment, balancing on a pair of aluminum crutches, my right leg stiff and strapped. The bruises on my body had faded into shades of yellow and blue, but the pain was still sharp with every step. I debated not going, but I knew if I skipped, it would only fuel the narrative that Amelia is jealous of Sabrina. I couldn't give them that. So I went. I wore a plain navy blue dress, ironed as best as I could. My hair tied back in a low bun. The gift I carried was modest, a $100 prepaid gift card, and a picture frame I'd found on sale. It wasn't extravagant, but it was everything I could manage after rent and the $4,000 monthly transfer I never missed. The moment I arrived at my childhood home, I felt the eyes. Guests glanced at my crutches, then quickly looked away, unsure whether to ask what happened or pretend not to notice. Sabrina looked radiant as always, twirling in a designer sundress, her hair curled perfectly, surrounded by laughter and admiration. No one asked about my accident. No one asked how I was doing. Instead, I leaned on my crutches while helping Vanessa set out plastic utensils. My body ached, but I smiled and nodded, playing my part in the background. As the sun began to set, Jason clapped his hands. All right, everyone, time for gifts. We gathered around the decorated table stacked with Sabrina's presents, designer bags, jewelry, expensive art supplies. Mine sat near the bottom, small and unimpressive beside the others. Sabrina opened my gift with a polite smile. Thank you, Amelia. This is sweet. But then Jason reached down, picked up the envelope with my gift card, opened it, and read the amount. His smile vanished. Raising his voice loud enough for the entire yard to hear, he said, $100? That's all you gave your sister? Well, she's been supporting this entire family with $4,000 a month. The air shifted. Conversation stopped. All eyes turned toward me. My throat tightened. My heart pounded. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. My chest tightened as Jason's words echoed through the backyard. I swallowed hard, my crutches trembling slightly under my grip. Then, with a voice barely steady, I spoke. That money, it wasn't from Sabrina. It was from me. For 3 years, I've been sending you $4,000 every month. The silence that followed was crushing. Faces around me shifted, some shocked, others doubtful. Then Vanessa stepped forward, her expression twisting with anger. How dare you try to steal your sister's credit? What kind of person lies at a birthday party just to feel important? I opened my mouth to protest, but I didn't get the chance. Jason's hand shot forward. He ripped one of my crutches from beneath my arm. My balance gave way, and I collapsed onto the grass, my legs screaming with pain as I hit the ground. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but no one moved. Then Jason swung the crutch. First strike, it crashed down onto my shoulder with a sickening thud. Second strike, it slammed against the side of my head. Pain exploded, and my vision blurred as blood trickled warm down my face. I heard someone scream. Sabrina stood behind Jason with her arms crossed, a smirk tugging at her lips. Vanessa didn't stop him. She only muttered, "Maybe this will teach you not to lie." The world tilted. My body trembled, dirt mixing with blood beneath me. I lay there, dizzy, humiliated, broken. And then, "That's enough." The voice rang out, sharp and furious. My cousin Adrian shoved through the crowd, yanked the crutch from Jason's grip, and knelt beside me. His voice was steel. "She's bleeding. Someone call the police." But he didn't wait. He pulled out his own phone, dialed 911, and spoke with urgent clarity. "This is an assault. She's injured. I have it all on video." The backyard that had moments ago been filled with laughter now buzzed with chaos. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some slipping away, others pretending to be distracted. But Adrian stayed, his hand steady on my shoulder as blood dripped onto the grass. I could barely hold my eyes open, but I heard his voice, firm and protective, as he told the 911 operator. "She's been hit in the head with a metal crutch. She's conscious, but bleeding. I need an ambulance and police now." And for the first time in my life, someone had truly stood up for me. Within minutes, the sharp wail of sirens cut through the uneasy silence of the backyard. Paramedics arrived first. A young medic hurried toward me, crouching at my side. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Can you tell me your name?" My voice came cracked and weak. "Amelia." He nodded quickly. "Amelia, you've got a scalp laceration and likely a concussion. We're going to get you stabilized and to the hospital." He pressed gauze against my head, stabilizing my neck as another medic unwrapped supplies. Then the police pushed through the crowd. 2 uniformed officers, Officer Davis and his partner. Their presence shifted the air immediately. Adrian stepped forward, phone in hand. "She's my cousin. He attacked her with this," he said, pointing at the bent crutch, "and I've got the whole thing on video." Jason tried to protest, his voice raised and defensive. "This is a family matter." But Officer Davis cut him off, his tone firm and professional. "Sir, step back. We'll review the footage." They watched the video on Adrian's phone, their expressions tightening as the scene played out. The blows, the collapse, the blood. The shift was instant, from neutral to grim authority. Officer Davis turned sharply to my father. "Jason Walker, you are under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly object. You have the right to remain silent." Gasps spread through the guests. My mother Vanessa rushed forward, her voice sharp. He was just defending himself. But the second officer shook his head. "Ma'am, you are being detained for aiding and abetting assault." Sabrina scoffed, arms crossed. "This is ridiculous." Officer Davis didn't hesitate. "You too. You stood there and encouraged it. Multiple witnesses confirm. You're under arrest." And just like that, in front of everyone, my father, my mother, and my sister were handcuffed. Jason cursed. Vanessa wept bitterly. Sabrina screamed in disbelief. But Adrian stood firm, arms crossed, his jaw set with quiet fury. As paramedics carefully lifted me onto a stretcher, Adrian leaned close, his voice steady. "I'm coming with you." And for the first time in years, I felt something new. Not fear, not shame, protection. The hospital was cold, bright, and filled with the sharp smell of antiseptic. They wheeled me into an observation room, where a team of doctors worked quickly. My head wound required several stitches, and the fall had aggravated my fractured femur, meaning I'd need to stay on crutches for at least another 6 weeks. My ribs throbbed, my body weak, but I was alive. Adrian never left my side. He sat near the window, brought me water and food, even spoke with nurses when I was too tired to answer. His presence was steady, protective, something I had never truly felt before. On the third morning, as sunlight streamed faintly through the blinds, he pulled a chair close to my bed. His voice was calm, but serious. "Amelia, I know this isn't easy, but I think it's time you got a lawyer." I nodded slowly. He was right. The police had already taken our statements, and Adrian's video was logged as evidence. But if I wanted justice, not just for the assault, but for years of neglect, financial exploitation, and emotional abuse, I needed proper representation. Adrian made a few calls and set up an appointment with Julia Collins, a respected personal injury and domestic violence attorney in Chicago. 3 days after I was discharged, still limping heavily on my crutches, Adrian drove me to her office. Julia greeted us with a firm handshake and eyes that radiated sharp intelligence. She wasted no time. "You have a strong case, Amelia," she said, flipping through the police reports, medical documents, and Adrian's video footage. Assault with a deadly object, witnessed by a crowd, backed by video, paired with hospital records. Very strong. Then she paused as Adrian slid another folder across her desk. My bank statements. The record of $4,000 monthly transfers for 3 years, $144,000 in total. Julia raised her brows, almost stunned. "You've been financially supporting them, and they gave all the credit to your sister?" I nodded quietly. "And then they beat me in front of 30 people. Julia leaned back in her chair, her voice firm, decisive. "We'll be filing both criminal and civil cases." "And Amelia," she met my eyes, "we're going to win." The following weeks blurred into a steady rhythm of preparation. With Julia's guidance, every detail of my case was carefully documented. She gathered witness statements from party guests, secured the full 911 call log, submitted Adrian's video footage, and included photographs of my injuries. My financial history, $144,000 sent over 3 years, was the final, undeniable piece. Meanwhile, my father Jason remained in jail, while Vanessa and Sabrina were out on bail, but awaiting trial. The community was divided. Some whispered in disbelief, unwilling to accept the truth about them. Others quietly reached out to me, admitting they had seen the favoritism for years. When the court date arrived, I walked into the courtroom on my crutches, my head held high despite the limp. Adrian sat directly behind me, steady as ever, while Julia stood at my side, her presence sharp and commanding. On the opposite side sat Jason, Vanessa, and Sabrina. Their faces were masks, Jason bitter, Vanessa tight-lipped, Sabrina blank with disbelief. I didn't meet their eyes. The trial itself wasn't long. The evidence was overwhelming. Adrian's video was played on a large screen, and the room fell silent as the sound of the crutch slamming against me echoed in the air. Medical reports confirmed the concussion, stitches, and aggravated fracture. My bank statements painted the years-long sacrifice. Witnesses testified that Vanessa and Sabrina had stood by and done nothing, some even claiming they seemed pleased. The 911 audio captured Adrian's unwavering voice as he reported the assault. When Julia addressed the judge, her words cut deep. "Your Honor, this is not just about an assault. This is about years of neglect, financial exploitation, and emotional abuse, culminating in a violent attack. Amelia has been the invisible daughter, silently supporting her family while they celebrated her sister. And when she finally spoke the truth, they responded with blood. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear my own breathing. Finally, the verdict came. Jason Walker was sentenced to 4 years in state prison for aggravated assault with a deadly object. Vanessa Walker and Sabrina Walker were convicted of aiding and abetting. Each received 6 months in county jail, mandatory counseling, and a 2-year restraining order preventing them from contacting me. As the gavel struck, relief swept through me like a tide. For the first time, justice had been carved into the record of my life. On the courthouse steps, the sun broke through the clouds. Adrian walked beside me, his hand brushing mine. My body was sore, but my spirit felt lighter than it had in years. As we stepped out of the courthouse, I felt the weight of years of silence finally lift. Adrian guided me down the steps, careful of my crutches. We sat on a nearby bench, sunlight warming the cool Chicago air. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Adrian turned to me, his voice hesitant but steady. "Amelia, I've been holding this in for a long time. I love you. I don't care about the crutches, the scars, or what you've been through. You're the strongest person I've ever known. If you'll let me, I want a future with you." Tears filled my eyes, not from pain, but from a depth of emotion I had never been allowed before. I touched his hand, my voice trembling. "You're the only one who's ever truly seen me." "Yes, Adrian. I want that future too." 2 months later, I walked, still with a slight limp, down the aisle in a quiet garden outside Chicago. I wore a simple cream-colored dress. Adrian stood waiting in a navy suit, his smile steady, his presence strong. There were no elaborate speeches, no staged family moments, just me, finally seen, marrying the man who had stood beside me when no one else did. Life after the wedding was calm, but not empty. It was peaceful, steady, and safe. Everything I had craved but never known. Our small apartment filled with sunlight, books, and soft laughter. With Julia's continued help, I filed a civil lawsuit. The court ordered part of my parents' remaining assets to be liquidated, granting me $90,000 in restitution. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about accountability. My story caught local attention. Domestic abuse awareness groups invited me to share my experience. At first, I hesitated, but then I thought about the countless others who had suffered in silence. I told my story, every painful detail, every ignored cry, and people listened. One day, while walking in the park with Adrian, now crutch-free but still with a faint limp, I received a message from a woman named Monica who had heard me speak. "Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. It gave me the courage to walk away from my abuser. I'm finally free." I read it 3 times, tears welling in my eyes. I had survived. And somehow, my survival was helping others too. Months passed. My leg healed. My heart healed. I returned to work part-time as a financial analyst, something I had once set aside for people who never truly valued me. Now I valued myself. Sometimes, I'd glance at the crutch tucked away in our closet. Not as a symbol of pain anymore, but of power. It had once been the weapon used against me. Now it reminded me of the day I stood up, spoke the truth, and finally reclaimed my voice. My name is Amelia. I am 33 years old now, and I survived my family. But more than that, I rebuilt my dignity, my strength, and my right to be loved. Thank you for listening to Amelia's story of strength, justice, and healing. If this story touched your heart or made you think, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you want to hear more powerful stories that inspire and raise awareness, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing voices that deserve to be heard. Stay strong, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next story.